Former President Donald Trump was in Eagle Pass today, a city park there. As we've told you, it's been taken over by Texas military and lined with razor wire. It's to stop migrants from crossing in. Well, the state also banned federal border agents from that area. Former President Trump was there along with Governor Greg Abbott.
Nice weather, beautiful day, but a very dangerous border. We're going to take care of it.
So that was the former president there. And meanwhile, President Joe Biden was seen on a fairly quiet stretch of border in Brownsville. For nearly a decade, that area was the busiest area for illegal crossings. This, by the way, is only his second visit to the border as commander-in-chief. Today, he called on Congress to pass bipartisan border legislation.
Let's remember who the heck we work for. We work for the American people, not the Democratic Party, the Republican Party. We work for the American people.
Democrats say the previous legislation failed after former President Donald Trump told lawmakers not to pass the bill.
So Republicans have said that President Biden is to blame for the crisis. I want to bring in Forrest Wilder. Forrest has been covering politics and the border for Texas Monthly, our partner that we're working with. So Forrest, first of all, thank you for being here with us. The first question I have for you tonight is, what are the differences and similarities that really stood out to you in today's visit?
Well, I thought the choice of cities that the former President Trump and President Biden picked to go to were very telling. You know, Eagle Pass has been the epicenter of this conflict between the state of Texas and the Biden administration over how to handle what have been a record number of unauthorized crossings. Eagle Pass is not a big place, and it's had to sustain quite a bit of influx of migrants, and also this has been the stage for this escalating conflict about how to do border security and who gets to do it. So it's been a very popular place for Republican politicians to go and to be seen among the concertina wire, the Border Patrol, the DPS troopers, this sort of militarized environment. Whereas Biden went to Brownsville, which has had a little bit more of an orderly and probably humane process for dealing with migrants. It's a bigger city. They have more experience with it. So that was a good backdrop for Biden to talk about bipartisanship and consensus and sort of challenge Trump to come to the table.
I think fair to say each place picked strategically, obviously, in this election year, both sides. Forrest, let's talk for a moment about Governor Greg Abbott and the bad news that he got today. And this is after a federal judge in Austin suspended Senate Bill 4. And for those watching who may not know, that law was set to take effect on Tuesday of next week. It basically would empower law enforcement to arrest and detain people suspected of entering the country illegally. Very controversial. Has the state responded to the ruling as of tonight? And what kind of reaction are you seeing and hearing in the hours since we got that news?
Right. The federal judge in this case had a fairly harsh response to Texas. Basically didn't agree with the idea that what's happening at the border constitutes an invasion, and that Greg Abbott has the constitutional authority to declare an invasion and to essentially supersede federal authority to enforce the border. However, the state responded immediately and said, we're appealing to the Fifth Circuit. The Fifth Circuit has been is a very conservative court, has been very favorable in general to the state of Texas, including on border issues. I suspect that because of how fundamental these issues are, that this will probably eventually, in some form or fashion, make its way to the Supreme Court. The conflict isn't going away, and there are multiple cases that center on this idea of who's in charge of the border. State of Texas, federal government. How do these two work together? Do they work together?
Forrest, I want to circle back to Abbott. You just mentioned that, and you talked about this issue itself. We know it's the #1 issue here for us here in Texas. You actually wrote an article about the crisis at the border and the governor. So why do you think this is the best thing that could have happened to Abbott in terms of the crisis?
Well, politically, immigration is a winner for Greg Abbott and most Republicans right now. As you said, it's the #1 issue in the country. It surpassed the economy. People are talking about it. There are a record number of crossings, and I don't think that what the system that we have in place is anybody's idea of a successful or rational system. And so Greg Abbott has been able to change the conversation, for example, from a pretty unsuccessful legislative session that he had to one about the border and immigration. He set himself up out of 50 governors as the main antagonist and combatant with Joe Biden. And he set in motion a number of things that we talked about that essentially underscore the idea that he's doing something when the president of the United States and the federal government is not. We could talk about whether it's effective or humane, but the fact is he's in the news in a way that he and his political team want him to be. It's a winner.
Yeah, this is not the end of this either. We know there's a lot more that's going to come out of this conversation, especially as we head toward the election. So thank you for joining us today. Forrest with Texas Monthly. You can check out his articles on their website as well.